this conversation today. Got a great gentleman with me from the state of Florida doing amazing things in the financial inclusion space. And before we get right into it, want to give a little bit of background about why we're doing what we're doing. Right. And so we call this Why Relationships Matter. So Goodie Nation has been focused on what we call the relationship gap. And so the relationship gap is the distance or the lack of connection between entrepreneurs and key influencers, particularly those from top companies and from top colleges. And so it leads to a lot of different things. Typically, the conversation when it comes to social entrepreneurs and diverse founders is around the lack of capital, and that's a part of it as well. But when you have this large relationship gap, it leads to a few other things, such as mental health issues or extra stress. It leads to lack of talent for your team. It leads to things like
Hey guys, how's it going?
lack of
Good, how
experts
are
and
you?
things of that nature. And so our focus here at Goodie Nation is to close that gap, but also shed light on why it's such a big thing. And so we have two great guests with us today, Bryan Young and Dr. Philip Hickman. And so we'll get into their stories, learn about the good, the bad, the inside scoop, and more so importantly about what they're working on today. So I'm going to kick it over to Bryan for intro before we go to Philip. Bryan, you want to give a quick intro?
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. My name is Bryan Young. I am the CEO and co-founder of Home Lending Pal. We are an AI-powered marketplace that is utilizing blockchain to make the process of buying a home more financially inclusive by hiding consumer data until after a lending decision is made, which relatively means that we're turning something as complex as buying a home into an online Amazon-like shopping experience where you can put your home in a cart and then artificial intelligence will basically find lenders that are willing to work with you, the best loan product for you, if that loan is a burden on your financial health, and give you recommendations on ways to make home ownership attainable for you.
Nice. And we're also joined by Philip Hickman out of the Midwest. Philip, do you want to give a quick overview about you and your company?
Yes, how you doing? And I want to apologize. I have actually first degree chemical burn in my eyes. I was using my son's facial cream, and
Okay, I think we
yeah,
covered everyone,
I
right?
had to actually go
AARP.
to the doctor's office. But no, my company is Plabook, which is an innovative reading technology that uses artificial intelligence, natural language processing, and speech recognition to help people learn how to read. And we really wanted to hit that pain point of reading. Obviously, in the United States, 75% of fourth graders in the United States read below grade level. But if you start to increase the literacy rate of adults, and then when you tie it to high school dropouts, and 80% of prison inmates have a reading impairment that's never been corrected. And also 75% of crime in the United States is committed by high school dropouts. And so we want to look at closing that wealth gap and also making sure that we start from the bottom all the way up to educate those.
Awesome. So I got introduced to these two gentlemen through the Hack the Wealth Gap initiative powered by AARP Innovation Labs. And so we had an initiative in June 2021 to do a pitch competition winner. The first place winner was Philip, $10,000 support from AARP. Second place was Bryan. And so they're doing, and the rest of the finalists as well are doing amazing work. And it's been a pleasure getting to know them. More importantly, it's been a pleasure getting to really know who they are and what really powers them in their origin stories. And so I wanted to go a little bit back. Let's take it way back. You know what I'm saying? And I start with Bryan to talk a little bit about, how you got to where you are today. What kind of, people influenced you? What are some of those inflection points and stuff like that?
Yeah, my first introduction to entrepreneurship was through my grandmother. She used to bootleg liquor out of her house, in the projects. And so, you look at the environments we come from, and I tell people all the time, I think unfortunately, while most, turn to drugs because that's really the only option that, you have in the hood or the projects, those are actually some of the best entrepreneurs you'll ever meet, to be able to manage people like that. But anyway, my grandmother was a bootlegger. And I used to help her. I think I was like 6 or 7 when I first started helping her keep inventory of her stock, trying to make sure people weren't stealing stuff and, counting coins, quarters, nickels, dollars, and stuff like that, and helping her out, just kind of understanding, business principles in general. By the time I was 12, I was, overseas in Japan, running my own lawn care company. There was a youth work program in which, I started cutting grass to my own. And then eventually I said, hey, can I expand this with the military base? And they allowed it to happen. And I got, government contracts from that. Nice. And then, by the time I got to high school, I couldn't work at Foot Locker or Foot Action. I guess I wasn't cute enough at the time. So, I went and I went to an ice cream shop. One of the guys my mom worked with at Bowling Air Force Base was at an ice cream store. But, Cold Stone, most people don't remember when they first opened, they were doing jingles and stuff as you came in, and the ice cream was really good. I was like, there's no way you can compete with that. And obviously you couldn't. They became a huge, national franchise. But instead I, had a trucking company, and that, I grew very quickly. I think it was about 22 trucks, a little bit over 34 employees in 2 years, and over $5 million in gross revenue in a 2-year period. And then after that, I went on to college to start my own digital marketing agency where, in 2012, I did digital strategy for the DNC and Obama. So a lot of, experience with entrepreneurship. And now I'm with my 5th company, hoping that it'll be the most successful one yet.
Nice. No, that's dope. I mean, so I started my first company in college, and I'm a true believer that the earlier you learn to go from idea to something tangible, is really a great predictor of success, because you really perfected it. And for me, it was like stuff like organizing like football and basketball and baseball games in the neighborhood. But you learn how to make money from an early age, which is super impressive, which again doesn't surprise me considering the success you have today. So Philip, let's kick it over to you. Let's hear a little bit about your backstory, how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, mine is similar as far as a young age, but mine started more with social entrepreneurialism first, and then it became to more for-profit entrepreneurialism. At a young age, just like you said, I actually started a candy store in my neighborhood, and once I was able to be around adults, I became the neighborhood president. I mean, in the hood, it means something. I was the neighborhood president because no one will step up, really. And in that, I started to see an enterprise. I started to organize organizations that come in and do clean, safe in our neighborhoods, to kind of, have drug house watches. And I created a couple of nonprofits. I actually received a scholarship from Bill Clinton to go to high school. They actually flew us up there to meet him personally and to go to college. But I went on college on a full, and the same thing as far as in high school. I actually went to my high school was only 20% Black. And so, of course, I would get in trouble for doing things like selling candy at school, right? And then I was always a great organizer. I organized a sit-in in elementary school, my 5th grade, where they asked my parents to come get me. And because they had switched from regular plates to styrofoam plates. And the reason why I had so much control, especially over the lunch, was back then, I'm gonna date myself, lunch was like 95 cents, right? And so there was always 5 cents left over. And so I would have people collect everyone's 5 cents, and and that would be my business. And then I would pay those who collected it during their lunch shift. And then I would have that extra money, to buy extra lunch and all those kind of things. And so I was real in tune with the routines at lunch. But yeah, organizing sit-in, they actually had my parents come get me, but they switched back to regular plates because everybody will refuse to eat. And then again, to backtrack, when I was in high school, Bill Clinton gave me and my organization a scholarship. And then in college, even though I played college football, was on an academic and football scholarship, I started different groups that help children, and we would get donations and those kind of things. Once I got, did everything in the field of education, was a superintendent, and regardless, I always had side hustles. Even I can remember one time, I was a principal in Chicago, and I also had a cleaning service. And I would laugh at myself. I would say, "Man, you Dr. Hickman, and you cleaning toilets." you know, because it's late at night and I'm scrubbing. When my employees couldn't come, I had to go to those dentist offices and I'm scrubbing toilets and all this kind of stuff. But hey, it was bringing in that extra money to to maintain the lifestyle that I had. And then so as a superintendent, every time I see a need, that's where any community that I was in, whether it was in St. Louis, whether it was in Chicago, Houston, Texas, and Mississippi, I would start things. In Kansas City, I helped start Turn the Page KC, which is a nonprofit reading organization. And then I went on to start in Mississippi Coding Academy, which is one of the top and one of the first nonprofit coding academies. And then in Kansas City, before I started my company now, I started We Code KC with my co-founder. And We Code KC, we actually teach coding from kids from 7 to 17 years old. And then the one in Mississippi Coding Academy, I have a funny story. And so what we do is we had kids who graduated from high school, no matter where they were at in Mississippi. And these kids, at the time, these babies never touched technology. I mean, they never touched technology. And so what we did was we trained them for a year. So we had to start from the beginning and really work with them all the way for a year to teach them programming. And we received like $9 million from Kellogg. We received $3 million from FedEx. The funny thing was I got a call and, you know, we called them kids, even though they just graduated from high school. And for some reason, they didn't apply to college. They didn't apply anywhere. But the counselors, the way we flagged students was the counselor said that these students were able, they were capable. And so we got a call from FedEx where they were working and they were programmers. They were Dev 1 programmers after a year. And they said, "Hey, Dr. Hickman." And I was like, "Oh man, you know, are they not doing well?" They was like, "Oh no, they're sharp. They're doing well." But for some reason, they come with a new car every day. And I was like, "Oh shoot, I didn't teach them financial literacy." I'm like, "Look, $60,000-$70,000 is middle class. Like you're a check away from poverty. You know, like you got to manage your finances." So I started really incorporating financial literacy within what we do. And then I started, of course, I had a speaking syndicate. And I backed that off when I was the national ambassador for the United States Department of Education. And then I started looking at the problem of reading. And, you know, I wanted to attack financial literacy. I wanted to attack the employment. I wanted to attack the future employability of minorities. And it just kept going back to reading. And so how could I develop something that took away the human element? But that still values the teacher, that values the adult who's instructing, but allows an even playing field for no matter what zip code a child is coming from, no matter what area a person has grew up in, or no matter what background a person has. How can we really diagnose and be real precise about an intervention to help support that person to read?
Nice. So you've, again, at a young age, like what you're doing right now, what you've accomplished should not be a surprise. At a young age, you've been an activist, you stood up for others, you've been an organizer, you know, you've been successful throughout your life. So this is awesome hearing you all's, you know, origin story. And to be clear, like I'm a huge like Star Wars fan, like not the recent 3 episodes, but like the old school, like 70s, 80s joints, you know what I'm saying? And so like learning about origin stories and stuff like that is really my thing. And so, you know, at Goodie Nation, the reality is, you know, people would think that, you know, we're Luke Skywalker, the star, the thing. When the reality, we're like Yoda. We're like here for hopefully 900 years. We go off into the ether. Like you all are the stars of the show. So let's talk about your Obi-Wan Kenobis. The people, your Han Solos, your R2D2s, and so on and stuff like that. Who are the people and I'm going to kick it to Bryan first. Who are some of the people that's come into your life and really made an impact? You know, maybe they're mentors, maybe they're people that worked at a certain company, investor, or somebody kind of along the way that really helped you all out.
Yeah. Well, first I have to say I'm the first person from my family to go to college. And so I think, you know, when I got there, a guy by the name of Aparicio Clifton and Carlos Sanford were probably 2 of the first influential Black men, because they were the only 2 Black men I knew that were successful, that were, you know, college educated. You know, I never had seen that before. So I didn't know what that looked like. And so, you know, being around them, I think that was really, you know, influential for me. There's a guy, he's a white guy, but his name is Ron Paleka. He was actually a former Time Warner Cable executive. I mean, I don't know why this guy would look out for me. I mean, once we signed the contract with them, he would let us go to the beach house, let us do a lot of stuff, just that you probably wouldn't expect, an older white gentleman to do for a young Black kid. And I think that showed me that, not all white people are bad, not all white people are good, but, in terms of, achieving that next milestone, sometimes you need people of different races, different colors. And then I would say that probably the third most influential, the last, I think he's fourth now, but the last most influential guy that I have is a guy by the name of Thomas Manning and Quancha Manning. They were actually the two people that they gave us $100,000 to start Home Lending Power when it was really just an idea and a design on a paper. Now, of course, he made me work for it for like 2 years before that. He was like, this idea isn't good enough. But I mentioned them because, when I was in Miami, these were a successful Black married couple, happily married. They just had another daughter. They were living in a penthouse in Miami. I mean, they were living the life. And it's just like, I had never seen that before from someone, to come from where we came from to be, successful. And they weren't successful. He has his own company, and he had grown that company from, I think 7 people to about 90 people over the last like 5 or 6 years. And it was just like, man, like you can do things the right way. You don't have to be in the streets or be a professional athlete to be able to have, a crazy level of success and be able to, travel the world and get, nice things. And so I think those were the people that, the specific relationships that really changed the game for me and really opened my eyes to, greater opportunities for myself.
No, that's dope. That's dope. Actually, I mean, if you don't mind me asking, no pressure here. You mentioned successful business person grew from 7 to 90. But like, how did you actually meet the person? Like, how did that relationship even begin?
Yeah, so our CMO, Frank Pollock, is he originally started as my advisor. I had known Frank for a couple of years, and in 2017, I moved to Miami over Silicon Valley, thinking that my mom was towards the end of her. She has cancer, so we thought that that was kind of going to be the end. Her bucket list was to move to Florida. So I was like, well, if I'm going to be in Florida, I might as well move to Miami. And so Frank and Thomas, I went to college together at University of North Carolina, and Frank's like, hey, he doesn't know anyone down there. Just take him under your wings and help him. And so the first week I got there, Thomas was like, hey, let's meet up, let's hang out. This is a 50-year-old guy. At that time I'm only 32 maybe. And so it was just like, okay, well, I'll go over. And I'm not really expecting much. I'm kind of expecting, but he's like, oh, well, just come to my house. We were originally going to go to a rooftop bar, but it ended up in Miami. It ended up raining that day, which obviously never happens. So Thomas was like, well, change of plans, just come to my house. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I don't know this guy, but I'm going to go to his house and see what he's doing, And the crazy part about it is that Frank never told me about Thomas or his company or what he was doing, how successful he was. He was just like, hey, this is a guy that you need to meet and that, we'll take care of you in Miami. And so I go to Thomas' house, and as I mentioned, I say, hey, I'm here for Thomas Manning. They're like, oh, well, we're going to buzz you up. So they buzz me up, and I'm at the penthouse, and it's just like, wow, like this is crazy. And so, yeah, that was kind of how we met. And, he just, for whatever reason, he stayed involved, and, he continued to call me over to have me hang out, to teach me life lessons and stuff like that. And, I was more grateful for that. And I think that showed me that you have to kind of give out and help others. You never really made it until we all made it. And, again, for whatever reason, Thomas does what he does. He stayed involved in my life for those years. So.
Nah, I love it. Again, another example of relationships really that sprung from people from top colleges as well, and that kind of goes down and trickles down from there. And that's awesome. So before I kind of kick it to Philip for the people in his life that's really been influential. I wonder how many times like all of us get those type of intros, but we don't really probably prioritize it, myself included. Oh, I want you to meet somebody, and you're like, well, maybe. I don't know that much about them, and maybe they're not that quote unquote important. You know what I'm saying? And you can just kind of let it slide on by. But you took the step, and it's led to some amazing things.
Yeah, and I think with Ron, I brought up Ron because it really taught the purpose of giving without having any expectations of receiving. And I think even when I met Thomas, I think so often we get to this point where it's like, oh well, if I made you that connection, you make $100,000 off that connection, you owe me something from that connection. And with Ron, it was just like, no, you don't owe me anything. And I think, going into a relationship with Thomas I knew him for about 2 years before he invested in the company, but I was constantly talking about the business, but I never actually asked him to invest initially. But as I, expanded what Home Lending Pal was doing, it got to a point where he said, hey, this is a viable business. I'll be your first investor. And I think, just that when you talk about building a relationship, it was the fact that I built a relationship with them. I didn't go in saying, hey, give me. It was more, hey, here's what I'm at, here's what I'm doing. What do you think, and how can I make it better? And I think by doing that, that really earned Thomas's respect, because you got to think, when people have money, you're not the only one that's asking them for something. People are constantly asking them for stuff. And so I think the fact that I went into that scenario not asking for anything but advice, I think that really is what won Thomas over and made him, want to invest in the company. And again, without that investment, Home Lending Pal doesn't get to where we're at today. So,
wow. So Philip, let's take it over to you. I mean, who are some of those people in your life that's made a huge difference?
Yeah, at first, the one who started exposing me to, like he would say, a different lifestyle in a sense, was the Kansas City Royals baseball team. So I had guys like George Brett. I had guys like Tom Gordon. The first time I drove a stick was a Porsche and a Viper. But those guys also, back then, those athletes also did other things. And so they were the guys that they introduced me to business people. They were entrepreneurs. They would come to my high schools. They would take me places just because they saw something else in me. As far as, from the beginning, my father, he was a very innovative person that he always was working on something, building something, even though he drove for UPS, trying to invest in something. He didn't have the knowledge, so everything didn't go well. But it always taught me that there was always more than one way to do something. But I think when the other influential was my ex-wife's father, Dr. Albert Fontenot. He was vice president of Play School Toys, president. He started his own company, president of Fellows Office Supply. That was the first time that and let me tell you, regardless of who I was exposed to with the Kansas City Royals, I was exposed to some big name guys, and it was just brief. You were exposed to their professional self, right? And so my ex-wife's father was the first time that I was around a group of Black men who listened to music like me, who can go back and forth and talk and joke around and relax. And I'm like, wait a minute, I see myself in them, because I didn't see myself before, because I'm not from where everybody else was from, right? And so that was the first time that I was like, wow, I can really do this. And believe it or not, I started looking at things like CNN just to learn how to talk like them when they code switch, right? And that started my journey of entrepreneurialism as well, because they showed me that, that he would always tell me, he said, in other cultures, their top student, their top child, they put them as an entrepreneur. The second tier child becomes a doctor, lawyer, but in our community, our top person becomes a doctor or lawyer. Well, a doctor or lawyer can only change their generation, their immediate household. But a entrepreneur can change generations, right? Can change a whole family outlook. And that kind of gave me that entrepreneurial spirit as well. There was another guy named, when I came to Kansas City, named Dwayne Crompton. And Dwayne Crompton, that was the first time that I actually experienced real deep mentoring, because unfortunately, I just felt in the community that I was in that our older elders, they were still competing for jobs with me. And they were like, and then, I would talk to them and I would say, wait a minute, you don't have any successor. Like, you're 80 and you're competing, for dollars, for grants, for all this kind of things, and you don't have a successor or anything. Well, Dwayne was one of the first guys who were very successful businessman, and took me under his wing, took me to conferences, took me, showed me the ins and outs of entrepreneurialism, and really helped me get started. And then there was a lady named Sally Williams, a little white lady from Mississippi, but she was in Kansas City. And she used to be top executives at different corporations. So when I started going to pitch competitions, because at first that's how you have to, unfortunately, gather funds in our community. It's not, a lot of people just don't automatically invest in you for one reason or another, being a minority founder. but she took me and kind of showed me the roadmap and the ins and outs, and didn't allow me to get frustrated, didn't allow me to quit, because it wasn't that much representation, because I always had to talk to older white men in a room, and they didn't understand, or care or see potential in me, or the business, especially with that early stage where they're investing in you as a founder. They, no matter how much degrees I had, no matter how much experience, no matter how many businesses I started in the past, I just wasn't speaking their language, or I didn't have that person to put that stamp of approval on. And that's what Sally really put champions around me, and to where those champions put that stamp of approval. And then, and sometimes that's all you needed, and things started to line up for me.
Nah, that's dope. That's dope. So if you're, so this to you all too as well, but if you're watching, if you're listening and out there, think about the people who have, just as these two awesome people just laid out, think about the people who have played a pivotal role in your life, right? Think about how you actually developed that relationship with them. And if you can, if they're still here, if you have the ability to get in contact with them, reach out to them and just say thanks. Right. Give them a heads up. I think it means the world for people. Right. And again, Bryan and Philip, I encourage you all to do so if you can. Right. Send them a note, kind of get back in touch with people if you're not talking with them enough, or recently. So let's shift a little bit around this thing around relationships as it relates to what you see for diverse founders, particularly in tech, right? And so we've already established that access to influential people, from companies, from colleges, at VC firms, maybe other entrepreneurs are important. From what you all see with other entrepreneurs, do you see that many? And I'll start with Bryan with you first. Do you see many diverse founders being connected to the right people? And if so, or if not, what do you think is the impact of that?
Yes and no. I think, the initial connection sometimes does happen. It depends. But when they're connected, it's not necessarily the way that, a white founder or would be connected. For us, it's more like, oh, you're connected to this person. That person only wants to give you advice. They're not looking to invest into the company. I've had that happen a lot. I think for us, again, it's about us controlling our own destiny. For guys like myself and Philip, Dr. Hickman.
No, you're fine, Philip.
For guys like us and women like us that are, going out there being successful, it's about us kind of paving that way and bringing others up with us. I think we get so caught up in, this is my egg, I'm not going to share how I passed success. But I think we have to, even when you look at Home Lending Pal, now, we've raised 3.5 million, technically pre-revenue. I mean, we've had like $94,000 that we've gotten from grants, but technically we're pre-revenue still. And that is a very impactful story because that really doesn't happen with minorities. So instead of me just talking about, oh yeah, look at me, look at what I've done, it's more important to, one, when I can make connections to different investors that I know will be interested in making those connections, but then also to yesterday morning, I woke up at 8 a.m. to help a local Orlando female, African-American female pitch because it's her first time meeting with investors and she's so excited. And I have to tell her, hey, don't be be excited, be ecstatic about it, but understand that, when you meet with investors, it's a whole different ball game. You're going to meet with a lot of them before you get that first yes, because unfortunately, our first introduction doesn't always lead to a immediate investment. That rarely happens for us. And so I think it's about us giving back and doing stuff on our own. But, with everything that's going on in the past year, there are more introductions, but, introductions are good. Advice is good, but money is better. So.
Yeah, for sure. Philip, what about you? I mean, how do you feel about, and what are you seeing with relationships to influential people and diverse founders?
Bryan hit it on the head. Unfortunately for minorities, the relationships are always mentor relationships. They're not investments. And it's kind of weird because I can see these investors. I mean, and some of them are investors. Like they're investors, but the first thing they do is mentor and set me through. And the other things are programs, send me through programs and, send me through, curriculum and those kind of things. And I'm looking at my white counterparts, and I promise you, they have ideas. Like I have a product, they have ideas, and they're getting funded left or right. And so, a lot of it, and it goes both ways. It's not just white investors, it's Black investors as well, or Black people that are a part of funds that maybe feel the pressure, whatever it is. I'm just saying, on average, I'm not saying it always happens like that, but on average, the first thing that they want to do to us is mentor us, as if we haven't, did our due diligence, or we haven't went through programs, or we haven't done those background things. But the problem is, relationships are so important. Like, relationships are key, because also the pathway to my success, the pathway to funding, all of it, was wrapped around relationships. And so, I have an entrepreneur friend, Roy Scott, and so, Roy doesn't hesitate to connect you to anything that he has done, or any connections that he has had. He's a pivotal person that opens up his Rolodex, especially the even programs like this. And so, I think it's important. Relationships are very important. Our relationships are necessary. I think that sometimes that Black founders are looked at different, looked at that we have deficits, or we have something wrong with us, and we have to be mentored before any discussion is talking about walking us through a door, or connecting us to fundings and those kind of things. But I think there's a large disparity in our community. The other aspect of it is, I think, between founders, and Bryan kind of alluded to it as well, is that there's I hate to say, because I don't want to be negative. I think there's a good groundswell of people who are trying to collaborate and work together. But there's also a other side of it. Just like you said, yes and no. There's a side of it where people are almost like crab in a bucket, right? And so they feel like they have barely, because they have barely, skimped in on one connection, or those kind of things. They hold on to that connection, and they want to be the only ones that have that attention of those connections, as opposed to spreading the wealth, or being able to tell people from another founder standpoint the pitfalls that we have to go through. I mean, it seems like every company, every minority company, without places like Goodie Nation and those kind of things, are reinventing the wheel. Like, they're going over the same hurdles that everybody has went through. And there's no rule book that's written. There's no, again, without understanding where Goodie Nation is, there's no access to good folks like this that kind of help you through that process of going through hurdles and those kind of things. So it's just, it's just, we're in a weird, dichotomy between two sides right now. And that's the side of, we create great tech. We are very smart, innovative people. And we always have to fight to create our own resources. And instead of the network, which we know that, there's a small percentage of minority women in tech. There's a small percentage of minority in tech, period. But that small percentage also, there's silos, and they're not communicating with each other, and they're not, building and closing the wealth gap. All too often, in this last thing, all too often, even through relationships, the matrix, the target that I have to receive funding is totally different than other people.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, it's not weird, because unfortunately we have to accept it, and we just have to keep moving and jumping through hurdles and obstacles. But it's just, and I have to have a lot of perseverance. But there's a lot of good companies, I think, that started and ended, and could have made a real impact on this world, and could have made a financial impact in the Black community. But because of lack of resources, lack of relationships, and the mindset that's out there for minority founders, they came to an end.
Yeah. So before we go into what you all are working on now, I actually want to dig in a little bit deeper in terms of what you were saying around the deficit, or the perceived deficit, for diverse founders. And so what we see, and the reason actually why we started this initiative at Goodie Nation, we saw that diverse founders and also social entrepreneurs typically receive funding about 2 venture investment levels lower than where their progress indicates. So in many cases, if founders were in some cases going for, or non-diverse founders were going for like a Series A, you know, or said a different way, diverse founders had maybe some milestones in traction, almost to the level of a Series A. They struggled with even getting a seed round, which is ridiculous. To your point,
Right.
and so
Right.
you know, those perceived deficits is 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 what is really rooted in lack of trust. So we talk about relationships, but the deeper part about that, in my opinion, is that the people that are influencers don't trust diverse founders, and because they don't trust, they can't go fast. I mean, they can't fund you when you just. They're not going to fund you when you just got an idea on a paper napkin, right? They ask you to jump through more hoops or hit more milestones, so on and so forth. And so
Right.
for me, it's about creating more trust between diverse founders and also social entrepreneurs, small backgrounds, and then people that are influential. And so, I've always wondered, what are and I think in many cases we know why. These are things that have been, in particular in American culture, have been here for centuries. Why isn't there more trust between people? Right? You get down to, and to your point, Philip, like it's not just non-diverse influencers and diverse founders. It's diverse influencers and then diverse founders as well. There's still a lack of connection there. So that to me
Yeah.
is the big part.
Yeah, because the reason why you know that is the and not a knock because it's still needed. But even when you look at diverse founders or diverse funds, the people who they are funding are, like you said, further along, where there's other funds and non-diverse funds, and they fund non-diverse people at a, like you said, at a lower stage with a lot more money, with a lot more support, and communities gather around to move these products. But the interesting thing, there was a research out that once I think Black companies actually, once the initial investment, they actually either raise more or it's something that they're that they are more stable of a bet than non-diverse companies are. But it, it's weird because with biases that sometimes research just doesn't matter. Like you would think the education part of it, to put out more information, kind of builds that trust. But there's sometimes such a strong historical backlog that people just can't let it go, man. And like you said, it spills into both communities.
Yeah, yeah, it's tough. It's tough. So let's talk about the future. Let's talk about where you all are headed now. It's kind of going to the final part of the show. So Bryan, I want to kick it to you. Where are things with Home Lending Power today? Any recent updates? Things you can share at least publicly. Where do you see yourself going in the next few months in the year?
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned, we just closed another oversubscribed round. So, we have now raised a little bit over $3.6 million to date. But to Philip's point, it wasn't easy. I've done 10 accelerators to get to this point. On paper, we looked like we were a Series A company way before. And to Philip's point as well, we had to really go and build our moat by being resourceful. And our current lead investor, there's another company, I won't say their name, but they were known to have copied, like literally pixel for pixel, took our idea, copied it, and went out and raised $40 million.
Oh man,
literally with our stuff. And so nonetheless, our lead investor met with their executive team and then met with ours. And they were like, it's clear that you guys are the ones that they actually copied. They don't have any clue of what they're actually doing. They're just basically doing whatever you guys do. And you can see that with a lot of the partners and customers they have, or a lot of the people that we have either worked with or turned away as we've been trying to build this more inclusive environment for minorities. But I really think that shows that, we are, as minorities, very smart. We are very well educated and very good at building companies. It's just that ability to get the resources that we need early really impacts us. Now the platform has a little bit over 20,000 users, but I don't think we would have gotten there. We had an investor move the bar. So, for us, we were told, we'll just show that 100 people will sign up for the platform. First month, we had 1,200 people sign up for the platform. The investor was like, that's too small of a marketing segment. Well, that's not what you said. You told me to get 100 people, and I went way above that. And so, but it was the unique thing for us that even now, I feel like the product is really only 70% complete. We just signed strategic partnerships with Experian and Realtor.com to improve the search feature and as well as bring FICO scores directly to consumers for free. And I don't think we get there without building that consumer advocacy where it was unique, where people start coming in saying that, hey, this isn't a completely finished product and we know that, but instead of ripping you apart, tearing you down, saying we're not going to use it, instead, we're going to build you up. We're going to give you feedback and stuff that you can do. Constructive criticism. I think in our culture, we hate constructive criticism, but by us being willing to accept that constructive criticism, it has allowed us to improve the product leaps and bounds faster than what we would have done on our own, and provide a better moat for other companies that are trying to replicate or even steal our idea, relatively speaking. So next up, now we have more than 300 lenders that have invested and have a real interest, not only a public interest, but a behind the scenes invested interest in ensuring that we get the things, the resources, the tools that we need to bring them into our network and allow minorities a greater chance at becoming homeowners. Well, minorities and all, but definitely minorities is their main focus. And so yeah, we just got to execute now. Now we have the opportunity. Now we got to execute.
Nice. Philip, what's going on with Plabook, today and what you have coming up? I think you're on mute. Word, maybe not.
Yeah, sorry about that. Like you said, behind the scenes, we're trying to strengthen our moat, and so we are finishing up filing a few more patents to kind of strengthen our stronghold in our sector. But as far as product design wise, so not only are we really shoring up our data set to be able to tackle on 145 different accents and also region and dialects, but we're also now coming out with Spanish as well. So we can work with Spanish readers. We have over 600 books in our library already, and so we're growing both English and duplicates in Spanish. And so we're providing a more diverse mindset. One of the things that we're working on is really making sure that we're culturally sensitive, meaning that our model, our AI model, our artificial intelligence model, is being predictive and sensitive both to the race of the student that's reading as well, and being predictive in our predictive analytics when it starts to adjust the text, that it's adjusting the text and putting in words that are also relevant to whatever region, whatever race, or whatever origin the reader is coming from. And so that's important to us because we want to make sure that the reader can feel themselves within the book that they're reading, along with the comprehension part of it. And so it's more of a social emotional push. Me also, not only being a former superintendent, but being a former child psychologist and school psychologist, I want to make sure that that we're increasing the love of reading and the joy of reading, and the joy of reading turns into the joy of gathering knowledge. And without knowledge, that is one of the key ways that us as a people and us as a nation in the United States can advance ourselves, is having that core knowledge and being able to understand what to do with it.
Nice. So let's, and this has been an amazing conversation. I loved it. Just kind of closing out, Bryan, how can people help? And then how can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so from a consumer perspective, really just creating an account shows the demand. So one of the things we're trying to do behind the scenes right now with CFPB is, well, really with government agencies, but definitely CFPB, is two things. The first is allowing the digital validation and verification of financial and credit information, so that now I do not have to go meet with a lender in person. I can go online and validate who I am and the finances that I have without any face-to-face human interaction, because we all know that that's where human biases lie. The second part of that is working with the CFPB to then allow for HMDA data submissions in terms of you have to disclose age, sex, and race. But our argument is that to truly create a more equitable home buying scenario, disclosing the race should come after the lending decision is made. So I shouldn't be forced to tell you if I'm Black or anything until after you've decided if you're going to lend me a loan. So the biggest thing that anyone can do, everyone can do for us right now, is just create an account. Have friends create accounts, and it does work. So we'll give you back good information. Even if you're looking to buy a home within the next 30 days, if you're looking at buying a home within the next 2-3 years, create an account, because the more accounts that we have, the more that leverage we're able to show with government agencies is why this should be a priority and how this solves the problem. But more importantly, it forces them to prioritize the integration into our ecosystem to really prove out this pilot campaign with us. And so that's my only ask is to do that. And next month, we're planning on making an announcement publicly. I mean, we're making it here. I'm making it here, but to $1,000 towards closing costs for those that are helping us. So, as we are having success, we're going to give back to the community by helping you with your closing costs. But that's all I can ask of you right now is create an account. Give me a big enough use case where I can go to Congress and Capitol Hill and really, make a valid statement into why this process is necessary, and not just have words or conversations, but an actual action plan that helps our people close on home ownership gap. To still a page out of Dr. Hickman's book. Last year was the best year ever in terms of buying homes. It was just historically low mortgage rates. 84% of the people that bought homes were white, only 7% were Latino, and only 4% were African American. And it's not to say that we're only focused on minority groups, but our biggest argument is that by helping minorities, you're really helping everyone. Because you're creating a more inclusive and transparent environment for everyone. So again, please just create an account with us and help us, build a use case.
And what's that website?
You can go to create an account by visiting www.homelendingpal.com or going to the Apple or Android market and searching Home Lending Pal and downloading the app.
Nice. Philip, same question to you. How can people help? How can they get in contact?
Right. People can help. We're starting a B2C, and so we want to make sure that parents have this great assessment tool. And we also are putting a augmented reality education app on the market as well for that B2C play. And I think that's important that parents are able to take control. One of the things that we kept hearing from the result of the pandemic was that because parents had to be so involved in their child's education, they realized that their child was not at the level that was being reported with the school system. And a lot of people became concerned and they want to know how they can get involved. And so one of it is look out for Plabook, Plabook, on the App Store. You can follow us and definitely on our website at www.plabookeducation.com. So playbookeducation.com. And we're coming out with some real good innovative tools that parents can use, not only to assess their child, but a good recommendation engine and a real prescriptive way that they can better their child's education and give their child the foundation that they deserve.
Awesome. Now, this has been a phenomenal conversation, gentlemen. Thank you a ton. I just learned a lot in the last few minutes about how parents discovered their children weren't as far along. Again, we talk about this thing through the context of the racial wealth gap in this country, just the sheer amount of people of color who did not purchase homes, in the last year, but also just to me, actually, Bryan, one of the things that really is the light bulb moment and the duh moment is I get that race has to be included, in applications, but it doesn't have to come before, the decision is made. And so I'm thinking like that's like a thing like should be done for everything. And if anybody has a problem with that, then we gotta start asking some hard questions about them, right?
Exactly. I mean, I talk about it all the time. New tech built on old broken processes or views doesn't allow for systemic change, and that system wasn't built for us. So the only way to change it is to change the process.
There it is. Everyone, this is awesome. Please support these amazing founders as they are continuing their journey to make the world a better place and more sustainable for us all. Thanks a ton. Follow us at Goodie Nation on all social media channels. Hop onto our website, goodienation.org. Support us, sign up for our mailing list, and support the founders. Again, this is a pleasure, and be back. We'll be back with you all soon. So be on the lookout for the next episode of Why Relationships Matter. Peace out, y'all.
Thank you, guys.
Peace.
All right. Have a good one, brother.